pour ces objectifs du développement durable, c'est qu'ils ne concernent pas seulement les pays en voie de développement ou les pays qui ont un développement limité du point de vue économique, mais c'est un exercice collectif de tous les États membres. Les pays riches comme les pays pauvres se sont donnés comme ambitieuse mission de revoir notre modèle collectif de développement pour aller vers un modèle plus inclusif, plus respectueux des valeurs sociales et donc inclusif de toute la population jeune et surtout la partie qui regarde les femmes qui très souvent sont laissées en marge des dynamiques de développement. Le sommet parlementaire mondial contre la faim et la malnutrition qui s'est tenu à Madrid l'année dernière. Donc si c'est ça, les grands enjeux et les grands défis que nous avons tous à affronter, la FAO retient que tout le monde doit mettre la main à la pâte. Tout le monde doit faire quelque chose pour atteindre ces objectifs. Et j'aimerais à ce point vous faire réfléchir sur un proverbe africain que j'aime beaucoup. Et ce proverbe dit, si tu veux aller vite, va tout seul. Mais si tu veux aller loin, va avec les autres. Et c'est un peu cette stratégie que nous avons, de vouloir que tout le monde mette la main à la pâte. Et donc, les institutions de recherche, la société civile, donc tous les citoyens, dans toutes les articulations de leur organisation de base, les coopératives, le secteur privé, auquel nous demandons un effort important pour adhérer aux objectifs de développement durable. Et si vous voulez une petite réflexion, il ne suffit plus aux grandes entreprises économiques de soigner les effets de leur activité économique. C'est dans leur façon stratégique de penser leur business que ça doit changer, qu'ils doivent aller vers un nouveau modèle. Et c'est ça que nous essayons, comme FAO, de faire avec eux, une réflexion qui ne tend pas à culpabiliser, mais à les engager avec nous pour qu'ils participent à la dynamique de redéfinition du nouveau modèle de développement qui est l'ambition de nous tous. Nous le devons aux nouvelles générations, nous le devons au climat et nous le devons justement à nos sociétés qui demandent à être de plus en plus inclusives. Donc, les partenaires ressources, l'importance de la coopération sud-sud qui doit être revisitée. Hein, ça a été pendant des années avec le mouvement des non-alignés, quelque chose qui a été brandi de façon très idéologique. Là, il s'agit que cette coopération sud-sud puisse maintenant prendre une nature concrète, une démarche d'échange, d'enrichissement réciproque. Et pour nous, donc, la coopération sud-sud, ce n'est pas un slogan, c'est quelque chose que nous voulons mettre au centre de nos stratégies de développement. Et évidemment, les parlementaires. Je vais vous expliquer ensuite pourquoi les parlementaires. Pour atteindre donc les objectifs de développement durable, les partenariats multi-acteurs sont essentiels. Et donc, le parlementaire est un acteur clé. On vous appelle député, on vous appelle sénateur. Moi, je préfère vous appeler les représentants de vos territoires et de vos communautés. Vous êtes les représentants, vous êtes le visage, vous êtes les mains, vous êtes les pieds de vos territoires et de vos communautés. Et c'est ça qui donne sens à votre présence ici, de façon que vous soyez redevables à vos territoires et à vos communautés, mais en même temps être capable d'impulser l'action de vos gouvernements et aussi de la contrôler dans ces programmes publics de sécurité alimentaire. Des années d'expérience et d'analyse ont démontré que l'amélioration de la sécurité alimentaire et de la nutrition est directement corrélée aux politiques et aux cadres d'action qui sont ancrés dans la législation. On peut faire des programmes ponctuels, très intéressants, très porteurs, mais il n'y a rien qui soit aussi efficace que les mécanismes législatifs qui restent au-delà des gouvernements, au-delà du changement des directeurs techniques des ministères, des lois permanentes. C'est l'objectif de la FAO, que vous puissiez légiférer en science et en conscience sur la sécurité alimentaire en faveur de vos territoires, en faveur de vos populations. Les parlementaires sont donc les mieux placés pour élever la question de la sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle au plus haut niveau de l'agenda politique et législatif. La sécurité alimentaire, ce n'est pas ce qu'on a fait quand on a fait tout le reste. Elle est véritablement au cœur de l'activité politique, au cœur de l'activité économique, parce qu'autour de la sécurité alimentaire, comme on l'a vu, il y a les questions liées à la santé, il y a la question liée de plus en plus, par exemple, à l'emploi des jeunes. Il y a des questions liées au changement climatique. Donc, vous êtes les mieux placés pour placer cette question au plus haut niveau de l'agenda politique et législatif, compte tenu de vos responsabilités, de vos compétences législatives, budgétaires et de contrôle de l'État. Vous devez, à mon avis, prendre conscience de ces trois importantes responsabilités législatives, donc les lois permanentes dont je parlais tantôt, le budget, parce qu'en fin de compte, le budget passe par le Parlement et c'est là que vous devez faire votre action pour allouer des ressources à la sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle et surtout le contrôle des projets de l'État. Et j'ajouterais même la relation avec les organisations de la société civile, les coopératives qui sont dans vos communautés et dont vous devenez, comme je disais, le visage, la voix, les mains et les bras. Que fait la FAO avec les parlementaires? Premièrement, faciliter le partage d'informations interparlementaires et interacteurs par le biais de plateformes, réseaux et alliances parlementaires. C'est ce que nous faisons. Nous sommes des facilitateurs. Et c'est ce que nous nous engageons à faire pour votre network. Vous mettre en contact avec les autres institutions parlementaires du monde arabe, de l'Afrique, de l'Europe, de l'Amérique latine. Et nous nous réjouissons du fait que demain, au séminaire international, il y aura le monde entier qui sera là pour vous accompagner, comme dans des fonds baptismaux, vers la naissance de ce réseau. Nous vous fournissons du matériel technique, donc des statistiques, des études, des données, pour aider les députés dans l'élaboration de lois et de politiques publiques. Il y a un député ce matin qui disait « il faut que notre activité législative soit basée sur des données certaines, sur des données sûres, sur des données scientifiques et technologiques ». Donc la FAO est quelque part détentrice aussi de tout ce travail technique d'expertise qui très souvent, je dois le dire, n'est pas connu et n'est pas utilisé par les parlementaires, parfois même par le gouvernement, de façon adéquate. Renforcer les compétences et connaissances techniques des parlementaires sur des questions clés telles que l'agriculture, le régime foncier, la sécurité alimentaire et la nutrition, par le biais de la formation. C'est un peu l'effort, et je vous en félicite, que vous avez fait en organisant ce programme, qui sera un programme chargé de contenu. Vous aurez donc des présentations sur la question de la terre, sur la question des financements de l'agriculture, sur la question du droit à l'alimentation et comment ce droit s'articule dans l'ensemble de l'activité législative du Parlement. Faciliter les liens et la coopération entre les parlementaires et alliances parlementaires grâce au partage de connaissances et aux échanges de bonnes pratiques lors de séminaires et conférences internationales. Appui à la création d'alliances, de réseaux et plateformes parlementaires pour atteindre l'objectif de développement durable. Pour nous, il est intéressant, par exemple, que pour le lancement des activités de certaines alliances nationales, il puisse y avoir des députés de l'Amérique latine qui vont assister les députés africains qui vont participer à des réunions des députés du monde arabe ou de l'Afrique. C'est cet échange continu entre les parlementaires qui ont des problématiques communes, même si les contextes sociaux et économiques sont différents, mais on peut toujours apprendre des méthodologies, des approches, des difficultés qui ont été surmontées. Tout ça fait partie du travail, justement, que nous mettons sur la table de ce réseau et que nous allons ensemble avec vous promouvoir. Ce travail, donc, comme vous pouvez vous imaginer, a une incidence politique. Et ce qui est intéressant, c'est que autour de ces objectifs, et ça c'est un témoignage que je peux vous donner, nous avons réussi à faire travailler tous les députés de la majorité, de l'opposition, de toutes les couleurs politiques, parce que nous sommes en présence d'objectifs qui ont été définis au niveau global et partagés par tout le monde. Donc c'est donc un terrain commun que les parlementaires retrouvent pour travailler ensemble, au-delà de leur clivage, au-delà de leurs difficultés, au-delà de leur positionnement à la majorité ou à l'opposition du gouvernement. Le développement des capacités, on en a parlé. Les modalités opérationnelles pour travailler avec les parlements, ça change en fonction des législations nationales, mais on a des programmes de coopération technique. On en a un, par exemple, avec le Parlement panafricain, et on a d'autres programmes de coopération technique avec des réalités nationales, des alliances nationales. Il y a des possibilités de signer des lettres d'accord et aussi nous donnons des appuis directs aux alliances nationales naissantes ou aux alliances nationales qui doivent être consolidées dans la recherche ou l'identification d'un plan de travail sur les priorités qui sont les priorités de ces pays-là. Les secteurs d'activité sont énumérés, l'investissement responsable, sur lequel vous aurez une présentation qui sera faite par ma collègue qui vient d'arriver cet après-midi, l'agriculture et systèmes alimentaires durables, la gouvernance de la terre, vous aurez une brillante présentation cet après-midi, la nutrition, l'agroécologie, le droit à l'alimentation, le genre, l'agriculture familiale et le changement climatique. Voilà, ce n'est qu'un petit échantillon. Mais ce qui est intéressant pour la FAO, c'est que nous sommes à la disposition des États membres. Ce n'est pas la FAO qui impose aux alliances parlementaires nationales ou régionales les priorités, mais c'est eux-mêmes qui expriment leurs priorités et la FAO se met à la disposition des alliances pour donner de l'expertise technique et mettre à la disposition cette capacité de facilitation des rapports avec les autres parlements du monde. Renforcer les compétences et connaissances des parlementaires en matière de sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle, mise en place de politiques et lois efficaces pour éradiquer la faim et la malnutrition. Là, dans cette page, vous avez un peu une partie du parcours qui a été fait par la FAO en matière de collaboration avec les parlements. Et je dois vous avouer que ça n'a pas été facile parce que traditionnellement, la FAO a toujours travaillé avec les gouvernements. Mais cette démarche que je vous ai expliquée auparavant, d'impliquer tout le monde, la société civile, les coopératives, a fait que nous puissions mettre au centre ceux qui ont les trois prérogatives que j'ai soulignées tantôt, la législation, le budget et le contrôle des programmes publics. La coopération sud-sud comme méthode de développement et d'apprentissage participatif. Nous trouvons que cette méthode a donné des fruits et nous allons continuer à l'établir. Vous avez dans cette dernière page une carte des alliances qui existent de par le monde. Ce qui est intéressant, c'est que tous les continents sont couverts. Nous avons l'Afrique, l'Europe elle-même, l'Union européenne elle-même, le Parlement européen lui-même a son alliance pour la sécurité alimentaire et la nutrition. C'est vous dire que les objectifs de développement durable ont vraiment une portée universelle. Ce ne sont pas des objectifs qui sont assignés aux pays en voie de développement, mais c'est un exercice collectif de toute la communauté internationale pour un modèle de développement durable. Nous avons beaucoup de travail à faire encore avec l'Asie, où il n'y a que le Japon, les Philippines et très récemment le Bangladesh qui sont sur la voie de créer leur alliance. Donc la présence de plusieurs pays du Moyen-Orient ici nous donne un certain espoir que de ce côté-là aussi, il y a des choses qui vont bouger. Il y a une très bonne dynamique qui s'est mise en place en Afrique. Il y a 4 alliances parlementaires régionales et 8 alliances nationales. Une dynamique intéressante en Europe. Je vous ai parlé du Parlement européen, mais il y a aussi l'Italie qui a créé son alliance nationale, l'Espagne qui a son alliance nationale. L'Asie avec le Japon et les Philippines. J'ai été au Bangladesh il y a quelques mois. Là aussi, nous avons mis les jalons pour que le Bangladesh puisse créer son alliance nationale. Et comme je l'ai dit, j'espère que certains représentants des communautés et des peuples qui sont présents ici vont à leur retour devenir les pionniers de cette dynamique qui s'est mise en place autour de la FAO et par la FAO et avec la FAO pour créer des alliances nationales parlementaires pour la sécurité alimentaire. Plus de 40 alliances ont été créées pour générer des cadres juridiques, pour guider le gouvernement, promouvoir des mesures législatives pertinentes, c'est-à-dire en cohérence avec vos priorités, mais aussi en cohérence avec le débat global autour de certains thèmes qui ont une portée universelle. Faciliter le dialogue avec d'autres organes parlementaires à travers la coopération Sud-Sud, s'engager avec d'autres secteurs luttant contre la faim et la malnutrition, la société civile, l'université et j'en passe. Voilà, exemple d'alliance, nous en avons déjà parlé, donc je vais plus vite. Donc, le renforcement des capacités avec des ateliers destinés au Front parlementaire contre la faim en Amérique latine en juillet 2018, quelques activités. Formation technique sur la gouvernance de la terre, ce que vous allez faire tantôt avec mon collègue, aux membres de l'Alliance parlementaire de l'Afrique de l'Est en collaboration avec une institution de recherche, RU Forum, en avril 2019, et le sommet mondial contre la faim et la malnutrition qui s'est tenu à Madrid, support technique dans l'élaboration de la loi contre le gaspillage alimentaire au Japon. Nous sommes très fiers de cette loi. C'est vous dire que même les pays très riches, comme le Japon, font recours à l'instrument des alliances parlementaires pour booster quelque part leurs lois dans des domaines spécifiques. Et là, nous avons assisté comme FAO, sur leur demande, l'Alliance parlementaire du Japon pour une loi contre le gaspillage alimentaire. Table ronde des parlementaires à l'occasion du lancement de la décennie de l'agriculture familiale. Et je saisis l'occasion pour vous dire que la FAO voudrait mettre en place un réseau de parlementaires pour cette décennie de l'agriculture familiale qui a été lancée en mai dernier à Rome, au siège de la FAO. Nous retenons que la place et l'importance de l'agriculture familiale devra être soulignée et valorisée dans les prochaines années et les parlementaires, encore une fois, sont appelés à la rescousse pour nous aider à accomplir ce travail sur l'agriculture familiale. Donc, ensemble, pas chacun de son côté. Je réitère le proverbe que je vous ai cité. Tout seul, on peut aller vite, mais tous ensemble, on peut aller très loin, on peut aller en profondeur. On peut donc aider l'humanité à gagner ce grand pari de nourrir la population mondiale de façon saine, de façon respectueuse de l'environnement. Nous pouvons donc tous ensemble créer un monde libéré de la faim, de la pauvreté et de la malnutrition. Je vous remercie pour votre attention et pour votre présence.
شكرا للمتحدث المنسق الخاص للتحالفات البرلمانية في منظمة الفاو جون ليون توداي. نمر إلى المتحدث الثاني ريغافا ماكاي، مسؤول عن مسؤولية حيازة الأراضي في منظمة الفاي. فليتفضل، لك الكلمة سيدة. Vous la parole.
Honorable members and Your Excellencies, allow me after that sumptuous lunch, to try and make my presentation. If you feel some nervousness in me, it's just natural. I'm going to make a presentation. It's okay? Okay. I'm going to make a presentation on the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forests. And how the VGGTs, we call them the VGGTs, facilitate access to and control of natural resources in the interest of national food security, or probably just say food security. Again, I don't want to bore you with the statistics. As Jean has already presented, all I want to underline is we have got our goal at 2030. And the important question is, how are we going to meet this deadline? How are we going to beat this target? At the rate at which we are running away from the target, or moving away from that target of feeding everyone by 2030 and having zero hunger by 2030. It's unfortunate that over the last 3, 4, 5 years, we have seen a sharp decline, disappointing statistics regarding our capabilities worldwide to feed our people. What is important here to mention is currently we are looking at about 7-point-something billion, just above 7 billion people to feed. 2030 probably we'll be looking at about almost 8 billion people to feed. By 2050, we'll be looking at 9-point-something billion people to feed. With all the challenges that we're facing, how are we likely to meet this target? So this is all what this slide is saying. The figures have been mentioned by Jean, and I'm not going to attempt to dilute what has already been so nicely put across. My presentation outline, before I get there, it's important now to, after those facts, introduce myself, who I am and what I do. My name is Mackay, as we heard, Mackay Rigava. I am a land tenure officer with FAO, and my main responsibility is to facilitate the application of the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forests, their implementation at Pan-African level, and their implementation in coherence with the African Union framework and guidelines on land policy in Africa, which were endorsed by the African Union states back in 2009, alongside the AU Declaration on Land Issues and Challenges. That's what I do on the African continent. However, beyond that, I'm also responsible for ensuring that whenever there's an international engagement that deals with the voluntary guidelines, I participate and share the experiences of FAO and what FAO does in promoting their application, and also raising awareness on the capacity development tools that come along with the voluntary guidelines. Now, for today, my presentation will look at tenure challenges in Sub-Saharan Africa or across Africa, and also try to tease out some of those challenges in the Near East as well as North Africa specifically. I'll look at the African Union Declaration on Land Issues and Challenges alongside with the framework and guidelines on land policy in Africa that were endorsed by the African Union in 2009. And I'll also look at some commitments like the Dubai Declaration during 2018, the first Arab Land Conference, and what the countries in the NENO region undertook to implement in order to solve the challenges of tenure governance. We'll look at the VGGTs zeroing in on them as the framework that globally assists member states, regional bodies, etc., with some solutions for dealing with governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forests. And that will run through to the end of the day, and I'll close with a presentation on the tools that are available to build the capacities of stakeholders in dealing with various aspects of tenure governance. Now, looking at the tenure governance in Sub-Saharan Africa and NENA, it will be important for me at this juncture to mention that the challenges that I have on this slide are not exhaustive, but are some of the key challenges that are cut across Sub-Saharan Africa and NENA. In Sub-Saharan Africa, the challenges on governance of tenure of land especially were a result of regional assessments that were conducted by the African Land Policy Initiative, which was established to promote the framework and guidelines on land policy, as well as to lead the implementation of the African Union Declaration on Land Issues and Challenges. And these assessments, regional assessments, were conducted throughout all the 5 regions of Africa and produced a synthesis of all the challenges that are across the continent. But there are some that are specific to certain regions. In this particular slide, I've tried to address those challenges that universally apply. The first challenge is the legal pluralism and multiple tenure systems that are born out of either the colonial legacies or out of our various traditional ways of managing our natural resources. There's widely agreed tenure insecurity, especially when it applies to marginalized communities, when it applies to unregistered tenure rights. The voluntary guidelines speak about something called legitimate tenure rights. And legitimate tenure rights do not necessarily need to be registered rights. They could be rights that are enjoyed through customary practices. There's there's consensus on issues of gender and land, access to land by women and girls. The African Union has made a commitment to ensure that by 2025, 30% of women in Africa will have documented land rights. It's also another challenge that the African Union is currently facing, especially at the pace at which we are going, the conflicts that we have, gender equality in our own parliaments, to recognize how many women are there. Are we reaching the target of 30%? If we cannot have 30% in parliament, how can you have 30% allocation of land rights out there in our villages? That's a reality. The voluntary guidelines have specific provisions and recommendations on how to deal with the allocation of land, especially access to land by women, who are the major producers of food, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, where they contribute about 70% of labor on the farms. And the question here is, do we want to still maintain the 70% of women on the farms? Or do we want to, as the African Union says, banish the hand hoe, the one we use to plow, and get men on the farms or get some mechanization on the farms? Those are some of the challenges that will come as we discuss this matter. Then there is a widespread land and natural resource degradation. This is more acute in fragile environments like the deserts, like the Sahel region, where there is heavy use of these resources by pastoralists, and pastoralists are being squeezed by pressure from the southern areas where there's more grazing to remain within the Sahel region because of the conflicts that were raised in the morning here between pastoralists and crop farmers, and therefore being forced to overexploit the resources within those fragile environments. and the fragile environments run across from Africa into the NENA regions. Thank God some countries have got other extractives that are supporting the importation of food. Then generally there's a lack of comprehensive and responsive land policies that are current and are ready to deal with the current challenges that come. In as much as we have policies that were designed to deal with the challenges, the rate at which things like issues like climate change are coming up makes it difficult for governments to constantly respond through policy reforms, institutional capacities, as well as legal reforms. There is also a general identified issue of weak land administration and tenure systems and institutions. Then there's an issue that deals with access to land by other stakeholders. Of course, we spoke about the women, but also vulnerable groups. In the tropical or equatorial regions of Africa, we have marginalized communities. We also have marginalized communities in the south, and mostly these marginalized communities suffer from general discrimination in terms of access to natural resources. Then there's lack of recognition of customary tenure systems. In many of our countries, gradually we have realized that only registered rights are the ones that are respected. And the customary way of managing our resources that has kept us going for so many years is gradually being ignored in favor of registration systems. I just want to pull an example from a meeting I attended last year when I was supporting the government of Namibia in their second land conference that was meant to review the status of implementation of land reforms in the country. While I was there, I saw a representative of one of the marginalized communities called the San communities. The San communities, some people know them as the Bushmen. When he came up to the podium to represent his community, unfortunately, he could not articulate himself, being marginalized. So when he came up, he mentioned one very important aspect, but through the voice of his own child, saying that all of a sudden, the San people are not being considered when it comes to access to natural resources and their management. And yet, for so many years, before even the Bantu came to Southern Africa, they found the San people cohabiting with their wildlife, managing their resources sustainably, and no overutilization and no poaching, as people call it. And all of a sudden, they are not allowed to live in the national parks where they were found. They are not allowed to live and exploit the natural resources. The customary way of managing the natural resources has all of a sudden been ignored. In West Africa, we find very strong customary systems, and most land in those regions are managed under customary systems with traditional leaders playing a key role in the administration of communal land, with about 70% of the land under customary ownership. This is huge potential for us to invest in those traditional institutions and their customer systems to ensure that their management of resources do not jeopardize food production and do not jeopardize food security. Widespread conflicts. Conflicts over natural resources, conflict because populations are growing, conflicts and civil unrest have been a source of food insecurity. It has also been a source of natural resource degradation. There's also the increase in large-scale land-based investments. Jean spoke about land-based investments, and I'm sure my colleague Emma will give us a more detailed presentation on large-scale land-based investments and the need for countries, for these parliaments, you parliamentary members of parliament, to ensure that we put in place policies, legislation, and institutional frameworks that protect the rights of persons that are affected by large-scale land-based investments. An ever-increasing issue and exacerbating the food insecurity and nutrition insecurity, that is climate change. And as Jean said, unfortunately, there are some states that seem to ignore the gravity that climate change may bring to sustainable livelihoods for future generations. We have got desertification. Africa has developed a program called the Great Green Belt program to ensure that we can hold desertification, and to ensure that those pastoralists I've been talking about that have for so many years managed the fragile environments of the Sahel can continue to enjoy the resources coming from the Sahel. These are some of the examples that can be replicated across across Africa and the NENA region. We have got water scarcity. It's a major problem that is affecting mostly the drier areas of our regions. And as a result, there's been general over-extraction of fresh water for all sorts of uses, for domestic use as well as irrigation. And as climate change is becoming a reality, it means the rate of recharge of our fresh water is a major concern. Sooner or later, the next wars, if they are not already being fought, will be fought over access to water. With water scarcity, we need national strategies and we need a regional response. We need countries to come together. And the platform that can facilitate countries coming together in a more constructive and effective way is most likely alliances and networks like the one that is being established now. Can bring the countries to deal with water scarcity, to deal with management of the basins, water basins, river basins, to ensure that we can sustainably harvest our water and protect future generations. Along with climate change, we also realize countries that may have been dry over the years are also suffering from floods. The rise in sea level has been mentioned as one of those results of climate change. So these are generally some of the challenges that I wanted to share with you on this slide. Now, coming to commitments, like I said, the African Union made a declaration in 2009, which is a common vision and commitment by the African member states to improve governance of tenure. That was at African Union level. And then along with that, the African Union also developed the framework and guidelines on land policy in Africa. These guidelines clearly give some direction to member states on how to formulate responsive policies that can deal with access to land and protection of land rights. We consider that land is a key driver for food security and nutrition, and allowing access to land by all stakeholders ensures that the smallholder, who is the producer of our food, is guaranteed to feed his family and probably produce excess to feed those that are not fortunate enough to have land to feed themselves. This declaration calls on a multitude of actors, continental bodies as the African Union. The declaration also calls on the regional economic communities, on member states and non-state actors to come together and rally behind each other, as Jean said, work together to ensure we can achieve food security, sustainable development, and socioeconomic development for our countries. Within the NENA countries, the Dubai Declaration of 2018, this is the closest I could get to a commitment that was made for the NENA countries in terms of improving governance of tenure in the interest of food security. The first one was to improve land administration and management and governance. It's stipulated simply as straightforward as that. With the realization that generally in the NENA region, it was discovered that countries at different levels of quality of land administration, management, and land governance. And there was a need to improve generally in order to secure our food. There was also a realization that there was a need to develop the policies and legal and institutional frameworks for recognition, recording, and protection of legitimate tenure rights of all land users, and to establish a regional framework for cooperation in the governance of land and other natural resources, especially one mentioned clearly was water. We know the difficulties and challenges that the Nile Basin is currently facing. And it's one of those rivers that can easily destabilize our relationships. And a regional response to dealing with management of such a water resource is very important for the peace and stability that further guarantees our food security. Then the issue of conflicts and civil unrest. We realize that over 65% of those that are undernourished, that are suffering from food insecurity, actually come from conflict countries. The NENA region has had its own fair share of conflicts. And unfortunately, with devastating consequences on our targets to achieve food security. Then the declaration also recognizes the need to protect and promote women's access to land, which in our customary systems is still a challenge that we need to deal with. And it recognizes the need to promote knowledge generation on land governance and sharing among member states. In Africa, again, giving an example, the African Union system through the African Land Policy Center has established the Network of Excellence on Land Governance in Africa. It's called NELGA. NELGA aims at generating a lot of knowledge throughout Africa on land governance and using that to also develop the capacities of universities to deliver curricula that responds to the challenges of Africa. And finally, research that can assist in policy decisions. So this is something that can also happen across the NENA region. Or probably, since the North African part is already covered under NELGA, and the Institute of Veterinary Science and Agronomy here in Morocco is the northern node for that network. It's the one that deals with all North African issues and brings them together and builds capacities of academic institutions as well as undertakes research to feed into regional evidence on status of land governance. I hope that what Hassan II Institute on Veterinary Science and Agronomy is doing can filter also into the Arab world, into the Near East or Middle East, and similar structures can be established to ensure that academic institutions have got the capacity to generate the evidence that is required by parliamentarians to make informed decisions. Now, before I bore everyone, these are the commitments that we have made. It would be interesting to also hear one or two indications from the member states that are represented here on some of the commitments that at country level you have implemented, what you have achieved, which you can share with the participants. I think I would want to pause. This is a very dangerous time to present because everyone is trying to digest what came from the table. So, moderator, with your permission, can I ask a volunteer from the parliamentarians to give us an indication on some of the key achievements similar to the ones I was citing that are being implemented at country level? I think it would be interesting to also hear a voice from the hall. Members, moderator.
نعم، بعد ذلك سنقدم، هناك من يريد تقديم تجربته، لكن بعد أن يعني تكمل مداخلتك ربما سنطلب من القاعة، ولكن رأفة بالحضور لأنه يعني أحس بأن هناك تعب. أود أن نقتصر شيئا ما من الوقت لاستيعابة الموضوع، لأن الوقت قد استنفد الإخوان جهدهم بعد الغداء. تكون الورشات بعد الغداء شيئا ما متعبة، لذلك ربما سنطلب بعد ذلك بعد إتمام تجربة مداخلتك ربما سنعطي في حدود وقت وجيز لأحد المتدخلين إذا رغب في ذلك. شكرا.
مداخلة واللي استعرض فيها جملة من الأهداف أو توصيات، منها ندوة دبي وكذلك الندوات المختلفة سواء سيكا أو الفاو إلى غير ذلك. لكن بالنسبة لي وددت أن أعطي بعض الأمثلة أو التجارب التي قامت بها الجزائر فيما يخص الموضوع الذي تطرق له المتدخل، وهو حيازة الأراضي بالنسبة للفلاحين خاصة الصغار منهم والنساء. في الجزائر مثلا قامت بتجربة تعتبر نوعا ما رائدة في العالم العربي وأفريقيا، وهو سن الكثير من القوانين لتسمح بحيازة الأراضي خاصة الفلاحين الصغار أو المستغلين للأراضي بطريقة تقليدية، سواء أو ما يسمى عندنا في الجزائر أراضي العرش أو الأراضي أو أمر الواقع، من خلال منها قوانين في الثمانينات، وهي قانون عندنا ما يسمى 83-18 هو 1883 سن هذا القانون في سنة 83، وهو ما يسمى قانون استصلاح الأراضي، يسمح بموجبه لكل فلاح سواء كانت امرأة أو رجل، وهو تقديم طلب والحصول على قطعة أرض لاستصلاحها وتصبح بعد استصلاحها ملكا له. وهذا القانون حقق الكثير من النتائج، وسواء كان من ناحية تحسين المستوى المعيشي لقاطني المناطق الفلاحية، وكذلك تحسين الإنتاج الزراعي، وفي نفس الوقت تمكين الفلاح من امتلاك الأرض التي استصلحها. ثم بعد ذلك، بعد أن أعطت هذه القوانين نتيجة جد إيجابية، سن قانون كذلك في السنوات الأخيرة، وهو ما يسمى بقانون 108 منح امتياز الأراضي للفلاحين كذلك الذين يمارسون النشاط الفلاحي خاصة في المناطق الريفية، وهو يسمى قانون الامتياز. أي قانون الامتياز معناه استغلال الأرض لمدة طويلة تزيد عن 40 سنة ومتجددة متى كان هذا الفلاح يستغل الأرض، وهذه كذلك أعطت نتيجة إيجابية. وهناك قانون آخر كذلك سن في نفس السنة، وهو ما يسمى ب 402 هذا القانون، وهو يقوم بتسوية الأراضي التي استغلت بطريقة تقليدية بدون وثائق، وهذا ما يسمح لمستغلي هذه الأراضي بالتقدم للمؤسسات المالية والحصول على المساعدات المالية أو القروض التي تسمح لهم بتحسين وتطوير الزراعات التي يمارسونها. هذه في الحقيقة تجربة أعطت نتائج إيجابية، نتمنى أن نستفيد من تجارب الدول الأخرى، أو تؤخذ هذه التجارب كذلك التي تمت في الجزائر لتوزيعها على بعض الدول التي ما زالت تعاني من معراقيل الحصول على الأراضي. وشكرا.
شكرا على وقتك اللي يعني احترمت الوقت. لك الكلمة سيد ريغافا ماكاي لإتمام مداخلتك، وإذا أكملت مداخلتك نفتح نقاش للإخوة، لأن أرى أن التعب قد ينهال من أجسادكم. لذا إذا تفضلت سيد ماكاي على إنهاء مداخلتك، أو ما زال عندك وقت يعني مقتضب إذا كان ممكن لإتمام لفتح النقاش أمام المشاركين إذا كان هناك من يريد أن يناقش في هذا الموضوع. شكرا.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My fear was after lunch I can have very little attention. There was a need to get some engagement to keep us alive a bit. And thank you, Algeria. Yes, our FAO has actually done some work with Algeria. FAO has been working in some countries in North Africa. And the experiences that have been shared, those are some of the positive ones. But there are also countries that can share their challenges with us. At the end, as Madam Moderator says, at the end, we could hear some of the challenges from some of the countries. Now, without much ado, let me get into the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forests, which is a global instrument which was endorsed by the CFS back in 2012, after about 4 or so years of consultations across the globe with all stakeholders to come up with this global soft law instrument on governance of tenure. In the history of our organizations, this was one of the very first instruments that was negotiated at a global level, especially regarding the governance of tenure of land and fisheries. There's obviously a question that is lingering in your heads, of some of you, to say, why does it not say voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of water, fisheries, and water was a contentious issue? Like I've already mentioned, it was a contentious issue that would never have seen the light of these voluntary guidelines if ever it was going to be negotiated, because this document was negotiated one sentence, one word by word, to make sure that it was universally acceptable as a voluntary instrument that sets out principles and practices and does not replace any laws, does not replace any treaties, and ensures that it can be universally applied to guide countries across the globe, from Africa to Asia to Latin America to Europe and everywhere, in the crafting of legislation as well as policies that can facilitate access to and ownership of natural resources in the interests of national food security. I don't want to get into the academic debate of why is it voluntary. I also don't want to bore you about the legalities of global soft law. Why is it a soft law, and why is it not a treaty? Why was it not forced into to become a treaty? Obviously, it would have been very difficult to apply it across the globe because of the different specificities of each country, each region, each community. It could have been a very difficult document to pass through for negotiation. Just to point out that in terms of being a soft law, in terms of being voluntary, if we look at the process, the actors who were involved in bringing this instrument together, as well as the actual output, which is this document, it does not comply with those instruments that are supposed to legally bind nations. It does not comply to the treaties that are signed, and therefore its voluntary nature emanates from some of those processes that were followed in the drafting of the voluntary guidelines. What are those key challenges in governance that brought about the dire need, some of them, the dire need for the voluntary guidelines to be drafted? We saw an increasing demand and competition for land and other natural resources Of course, due to population growth, naturally, urbanization, which is a key issue in the NENA region, large-scale land-based investments, which came about in around 2008 or so due to the global food crisis and the rush for virgin land in some of the countries in the developing world, and threatened the legitimate tenure rights of occupiers of that land. Changing diets across the globe. Demand for energy, we saw a lot of companies coming across to Asia, to Africa, to Latin America to get land to grow biofuel. Climate change, again, was another issue. But at the same time, as you see on your right, governing institutions were not ready to put in place policies, legislation, institutional frameworks that would quickly respond to those challenges. And in between, we're being now faced with land rights also not being recognized, as I've indicated, discrimination with regard to access to natural resources, inequitable access to land, forced evictions, which were a result of the rush for land, the urbanization, and so on and so on, corruption, which is a key issue. And by the way, before I depart from that corruption issue, this year, the theme of the Conference on Land Policy for Africa is fight against corruption. And the conference will be held in Abidjan in November. You are welcome to attend if you register. Then there's limited institutional capacities, expensive and difficult procedures, lack of accountability and transparency, and contradictory laws that are across. We heard about the many laws that were in Algeria. Some of them needed to be harmonized. So whose baby is responsible governance of tenure? You can see the stakeholders that are all involved in governance of tenure. Everyone, it's everyone's baby. We have got the states, courts, and human rights institutions dealing with a set of issues. The voluntary guidelines, if you read the voluntary guidelines, they call upon states to do certain actions because the states have got the power to enact legislation, to put in place policies, to strengthen institutions, to allocate budgets for that purpose. Then we've got tenure professionals who are supposed to build the capacities to produce evidence that can be used by parliaments. We've got cooperatives, we've got businesses and investors who are supposed to ensure in their investments they take into consideration the interests of communities. Then we've got the communities themselves who should be empowered by civil society to be able to defend their rights, to negotiate their rights when their rights are being infringed upon. And we've got civil society, which is to oversee the implementation of the laws and assist in the monitoring of implementation of policies, laws, and institutional frameworks that promote tenure governance. It's important that we know the purpose of the VGT. Like I said, it's a global commitment to eradicate poverty and a reference to provide guidance in terms of achieving food security. And the goal of the VGTs is to attain food security and nutrition by promoting secure access to natural resources. And the core of the VGT is a human rights-based approach in access to natural resources to ensure food security, and also to support the progressive realization of food by all. And we respond to the VGTs. The VGTs respond to those SDGs that are shown on the slide. Governance of tenure, I've been shown that I have very little time by the moderator. So I'll try to be fast. The governance of tenure, I don't think I have to overburden this definition, but what is important is just to talk about the responsible nature of these guidelines. Promoting governance of tenure that is responsible enough to protect the rights of those that are weak. So So what do we have in the voluntary guidelines, the contents of the voluntary guidelines? It is important for us to look at the contents of the voluntary guidelines in order for us to understand how to use them. First is the principles. The general principles of the voluntary guidelines are 5. The recognition and respect of legitimate tenure rights, and once they've been recognized and respected, they have to be safeguarded, and to promote and facilitate their enjoyment, as well as to provide access when the tenure rights are infringed upon, and finally, to prevent disputes and conflicts over tenure rights. And on the right, I've got the principles of application. Like I said, human-based approach, human dignity. It's a human right to have access to natural resources, productive natural resources and food. To be non-discriminatory. I'll not mention all of them. I've got a lot. I've got a whole 2 hours. The moderator is putting a lot of pressure on me. I thought I had my time that was given. And also, the issue of consultation I want to mention is an important issue, and participation of all those who may be affected by actions that infringe on tenure rights, and a need for transparency and accountability in dealing with governance of tenure. Okay, the actions that we have directed by the voluntary guidelines. One of the actions is the rights and responsibilities related to tenure. On that, we have the following actions: to recognize and protect tenure rights, and the voluntary guidelines elaborately provide provisions that have to be followed in order to ensure that we can recognize and protect tenure rights, including the registration of those rights or the recording of those rights. Registration is not the right word. The removal of discrimination on access to tenure rights, especially for the most vulnerable groups. And the need to provide timely and affordable, effective means to resolve any disputes that may arise in the allocation of tenure rights. They may arise between two communities, two individuals, or they may arise between the community and the state, where the state acquires the land and allocates the land to an investor. Then, under the policy and legal and organizational frameworks, which you will see under Part 2 of our voluntary guidelines, there's a need to constantly review the policies and legislation. I heard yesterday a statement, someone says, it's a lifelong commitment to ensure that we constantly review our policies and to ensure our policies are responsive to the challenges. When we look at climate change, climate is changing all the time and posing more challenges, new challenges to us, and we have to constantly deal with, put in place innovations to deal with those challenges. Facilitation facilitator, give me a few minutes more. Otherwise, I'll do injustice to this. There is also the need to ensure that states can deliver services equally to all members of society. Part 3 of the voluntary guidelines deal with legal recognition and allocation of tenure rights. These may seem quite abstract terms, but it's just the beginning. If we have another session with this parliamentary network, we'll get deeper into the specific application and how to achieve what is prescribed by the, or recommended by the voluntary guidelines. There's a need to put the safeguards on tenure rights. That's all I can say on this slide under the pressure that I'm undergoing. Then part 4 deals with transfers and other changes to tenure rights, mainly transactions in rights and how those transactions should be dealt with, what institutions have to be put in place, and capacities of government to deal with that. Then part 5 deals with administration of tenure. Yes, I'll finish now. Administration of tenure. which is a very important area that deals with the registration institutions, deals with property valuation, expropriation, deals with taxation, deals with land use planning. We heard about land use planning today, dispute resolution and conflict resolution, as well as addressing the transboundary nature of managing natural resources, either for pastoralism or natural resources in terms of water, rivers, and so on. Then part 6 deals with responses to climate change. I won't overburden that point. I've already spoken about it. Then part 7, which is the last part, deals with the monitoring of implementation of the voluntary guidelines, which is led by the Committee on Food Security, and FAO has been mandated to ensure that the voluntary guidelines are implemented. Then this last slide shows you the outfit of technical guiding instruments and technical guides that are available to build your capacities in the specific thematic areas of the voluntary guidelines. And lastly, last slide, yes, last slide, very last slide. The last slide, I've tried to crystallize some of the responsibilities of parliamentarians when it comes to the governance of tenure. First one is to promote responsible governance through, okay, let me not do it like that, is to put in place policies, legislation, and organizational frameworks that facilitate the promotion of responsible governance of tenure, and that are consistent with existing obligations under our own national laws, because we do not deviate from our laws, and to recognize and respect legitimate tenure rights, and promote socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable land-based investments, and remove any obstacles that are faced by women and girls in access to natural resources, and ensure full and meaningful participation of everyone when it comes to putting in place policies that affect them in terms of enjoyment of tenure rights, and to facilitate the regular review of our policies and legislation. And how is this done? This is done and achieved through the lawmaking role that parliamentarians play, through the role of budgetary allocation that the parliamentarians have, and through the oversight that the parliamentary committees have when it comes to natural resources. With that, I want to thank you.
أنا جد متأسفة سيد مكاي. لحظة، one second. أنا متأسفة لأن سنفتح لديك نقطة نظام أو تدخل.
I mean, Madam Chair, I wish you had let.
لحظة فقط. أنا شكرا سيد مكاي على احترامك للوقت رغم شيئا من الضغط، لأن المتدخلين يعني بدأوا يظهر عليهم حالة تعب. سيدي، هل لديك مداخلة؟ لأننا نود أن نفتح لائحة للتدخلات.
But point of order, Madam, is I wish to understand how are we going to cope with the first presentation, which was done in French, number one. Number two, now, are we going to get maybe the presentation in the written form in the English language? Because had you allow us to maybe deliberate upon it before you call the next speaker, it would have been better. Right now, I wonder, even the people who speak French would have embraced every word in the presentation. Right now, we are having a problem. That's what I want to raise to you, Madam, for your consideration.
شكرا سيدي. المتحدثان لهم الاختيار في اللغة لأن هناك ترجمة. بالنسبة للوثائق فإن لاسيكا ستعمل على توفير هذه الوثائق بجميع اللغات، باللغة العربية، بالفرنسية، بالإنجليزي، حتى ربما بجميع لغات المشاركين. هذا إذا كان قد أجبتك عن هذه نقطة النظام. نمر الآن لفتح نقاش حول العرضين الذي قدمه السيد جون ليونارد توداي وكذلك سيد ريغافا ماكاي. تفضلوا نفتح لائحة للمتدخلين وبعد ذلك نحاول أن نقتضب في الوقت نظرا لتعبكم وكذلك والتفاعل مع المتدخلين. هل هناك تدخلات في هذا من خلال ما تقدم من العروض؟ يبدو أن التعب قد نال من المشاركين. You want no? Okay. سيد مكي، أرى أن المتدخلين يعني نال منهم التعب وربما سنستأنف هذا في الجلسة القادمة إذا كان هناك فرصة للنقاش. هناك تدخل؟ لا أحد يرغب بالتدخل، لكن تدخل سيدة من البحرين، الدكتورة جهاد عبد الله من البحرين، تفضلي.
شكرا سيدة الرئيسة. بس حبذا لو يتفضل الأستاذ مكي، عفوا إذا نطقت الاسم صحيح أو لا، بذكر الأدوات التي من الممكن أن تساعد المشرعين في التي يمكن أن يستخدمها المشرعين في هذا الجانب، لأنه هو تطرق أن هناك أدوات من الممكن مساعدتنا كمشرعين، فإذا ممكن. شكرا.
لديك سؤال سيد ماكاي. السيدة تسأل عن ما هي الأدوات والآليات التي يمكن استعمالها البرلمانيين في حجازة هذه الأراضي. تفضل سيد ماكاي.
The problem I'm facing here is that every time I'm on one channel in English, all of a sudden it turns to another language. While she's speaking, I'm trying to find out which channel is now English. And I lost 3/4 of what she was saying. So the channels are changing constantly. Could the interpreters keep us on one single channel for English, please? Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to deal with the questions. Could I know which channel is English, please?
يمكنك إعادة السؤال لأنه الترجمة لم يتوصل بها. الإخوان خليوا ليه في واحد القناة لأن كتشونجاو القناة كيلقاش كيفاش يلقى الترجمة. It's okay.
No, I want to hear which one is English.
Maybe ترجمة. الإخوان اللي في الترجمة اش من قناة فاش هل هناك ترجمة بالإنجليزي بالعربي؟
Interpreters.
One.
Channel
Number one. Yeah. Channel one.
Yes. Loud and clear, yes.
تفضلي سيدة عادل.
من الممكن يعني لو من الممكن أن تشرح لنا ما هي الأدوات التي ذكرتها التي قد تساعد أو ممكن تزويد البرلمانيين بها. شكرا.
Okay. Yes. I have tools that are on one of my slides. One of the first, the major one, the key one is the VGT itself is an instrument. Then we have the framework and guidelines on land policy in Africa, which is an African regional instrument that guides African member states on governance of land. Then we have the voluntary guidelines on the right to food. It's a specific guideline which gives guidance to member states on how to deal with issues that promote access to food. Then we have And the other instrument is the Principles of Responsible Agricultural Investments, which is a CFS instrument. We call it RAI guidelines. Then we have the last one, but not least, which is the voluntary guidelines on small-scale fisheries. With the voluntary guidelines, we have technical guides that now expound on the, you may have the thin little book which is written voluntary guidelines in Arabic and French. With that, we have thicker volumes of documents that I'm going to distribute to you on USB flash drives. There are 11 of them, the technical guides that have been developed to give specific direction and guidance to member states in the implementation of voluntary guidelines. The first one deals with governing land for women and men, which promotes access to land by women. And the second one, it deals with improving the governance of forestry resources. And the third one, which is very key, which mainly touches on the rights of marginalized communities, is fostering respect for free, prior, and informed consent whenever states and other stakeholders take actions that may affect legitimate tenure rights. And then the fourth one deals specifically on the thematic area of large-scale land-based investments and how to put in place investment approval processes that are conducive to food security, promote a win-win situation between the communities that are affected as well as the investors. Then the fifth one is how to put in place laws or legal instruments that are responsive to the attainment of food security. FAO has also developed a legal assessment tool that can be used to assess your legislation on how close it is to fulfilling the aspirations of the voluntary guidelines. Then we have a guideline that specifically aims at improving the governance of pastoral lands. I talked about pastoralism as a transboundary issue. So that specific guideline gives you details on how to achieve governance of pastoral lands that is responsible. Then a guideline on investors, giving investors direction on how to ensure that their investments don't infringe on the rights of people. Then two guidelines, 8 and 9, that deal with recording of tenure rights. And 8, 9, and 10, that deal with governance of recording of rights. Then 11, which is mainly focusing on valuation of property. We have one instrument which comes from the African Union, and that instrument is the guiding principles on large-scale land-based investments, which can be used in conjunction with technical guide 4 and 7 from the voluntary guidelines.
شكرا سيد مكاي على هذه التوضيحات. هل هناك من يريد أن يتدخل أو سؤال أو أي شيء؟ يعني يبدو أنك وفقت في المداخلات أنت والسيد ريغافا مكاي في هذه المداخلة. هناك مداخلة من الأخ الجزائر، تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سؤال موجه للأخ فيما يخص الأراضي. Les a générés en deux catégories, les terres qui sont exploitées d'une manière coutumière. احنا عندنا في الجزائر اراضي العرش والله لي دومين بريفي دو ليتا، وكاين بيان سور لي تير اللي عندهم مارك نوتاري. وما هي قوه الكوتشيميه هذه الارض العرشيه؟ كاين الناس موجودين في هذه الاراضي ولكن ما عندهمش انه با داكت. ما هي القوه القانون فيها منذ زمان دي جينيراسيون. وشكرا.
شكرا. هل توصلت بالترجمة؟ تفضل سيد مكا.
I love how my presentation, I thought it had not been grasped, but and that there's a clear distinction between land with title and land which doesn't have title, which is probably managed under customary rights. The voluntary guidelines used together in conjunction with the technical guides that deal with creating systems of recording of tenure give specific directions to member states on how to deal with the recognition of those rights which are under lands that are under customary ownership. And that is why the voluntary guidelines also promote the strengthening of customary tenure systems and strengthening the capacities of traditional authorities to manage the resources under their jurisdiction and to understand how better to protect the lands that are under their jurisdiction. What is important here is for example, in some countries, FAO has been assisting the governments to record, not necessarily in a formal way, but to give some formality into the determination of the boundaries of parcels that are owned by people in the communal areas, giving them some certificates. The difficulty has been the ability of legislation to recognize these certificates and integrate them into the formal registration system. And secondly, for financial institutions to recognize these certificates as good security for lending money to the owners so that they can improve their livelihoods and improve production. In some countries, like Uganda, some banks have already started recognizing the customary certificates of ownership and lending some amount of money to the holders of those certificates. In Namibia, about 60% of customary land has been issued with communal land certificates, and negotiations are underway for the recognition of these certificates to ensure that they can be used as collateral to borrow money, to send children to school, to improve production on the farms, and so on and so on. So the voluntary guidelines have got specific provisions, and the technical guides are there to guide step by step on how to achieve the recording of those tenure rights. And that is why the tenure rights are called legitimate. They may not be recorded, but their legitimacy is drawn from the occupation and use by those communities. I hope I've answered your question.
لديك سؤال تفضل سيد.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank Mr. McKay with this beautiful presentation about how land can be controlled and be helpful to eradicate poverty, which is the most important aspect of our lives all over the world. But Dr. McKay, Mr. McKay, I know you know that there's a lot of discrimination against the girl child in terms of inheritance. A girl in our culture in Africa is not really expected to inherit land from her own family, except if there would be a sort of an intervention from other courts of laws and all that, that might protect the child. But this happens even in the Arab world where the girls are not really recognized. So what I want to maybe, how much to know, how much is your advocacy in the FAO to help this to be eradicated and be removed as an impediment for a girl child to inherit and, of course, use what is her own right in our own, even inheritance, succession otherwise. You will know and remember that in Southern Africa, in Africa, most of the countries, girls do not have a right to get their land as their own. Can you help us maybe to enlighten what are the efforts that the FAO has played so far in order, I know you have mentioned this, and this has been very broad presentation. And I wish, even if it's done in English, one would get sort of a presentation of yours so that we can influence, as members of parliament, the changing of very intransigent laws that are still very primitive in case of the girl child to be helped. And would you share with us how much FAO has really tried to advise and advocate parliaments, governments, in order to make sure? It's very difficult even for a certain member to make what we call in other countries a private member's bill that might change all these impediments to the girl child or a woman who cannot inherit her own father's or family's inheritance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Very good question and very pertinent one as well. Like I mentioned, you may have recognized that the very first technical guide that has been developed under the voluntary guidelines deals specifically with that important issue. It only shows how important this issue is to FAO and how important this issue is in terms of food production. We recognize in our communities, in African societies, women spend most of their time on the farms. They are the producers of food. And when you read the voluntary guidelines, you never find one chapter that talks only about women. You find women's land rights cutting across all the aspects of the voluntary guidelines to ensure that whoever is dealing with any aspect of tenure governance, any thematic area, gender is mainstreamed. FAO has been working over the years to collect data on women's land rights. FAO has been working over the years for empowerment of women, collecting data. And has partnered with regional institutions like the African Union to promote gender, especially when you look at how the framework and guidelines on land policy have been formulated and how the VGGTs have been formulated. Currently, there's an instrument that we have just finalized. It's led by myself. I'm from FAO, so I'll talk about it proudly. Is the strategic framework for integrating the VGGTs, the voluntary guidelines, and the framework and guidelines on land policy. And within that strategic framework, one of the key issues that run across in the document is the need to respect and protect tenure rights of women and to ensure that there's access to land by women and girls and other vulnerable groups. The voluntary guidelines are centered around promoting access to rights by what they call vulnerable groups. And among the disadvantaged women and other vulnerable groups, which are minorities, people with disabilities, refugees, and so on and so on. So we have a specific program aiming at women. And the African Union, working with FAO, have now put in place, you may know, the target of 2025 to achieve 30% of documented land rights for women in Africa. By 2025, we are just a stone's throw away from 2025. And we need to work at breakneck speed to achieve that target. So these are some of the initiatives on the continent. But also to qualify your statement, yes, if I go to Lesotho, to Swaziland, to South Africa, to Zimbabwe, probably Botswana, I'll find that the girl child women are not obvious successors in terms of ownership. When I go to Namibia, you will find communities where the women are the ones that really own and they inherit property. If I go to Malawi, I'll also find the same. There are communities where the women are the ones that own. In actual fact, unlike Lesotho and Zimbabwe, the husband goes to the wife's swarm because that's where the property is, and he is married away instead of the other way around. So they have the power, but also in the northern areas of Malawi, it's a different issue altogether. So across our continent, the issues have been dealt with in a different way, but generally, our women do not have adequate access to productive resources.
Thank you. أعتقد أن هناك سؤال من الأخ من ليبيا.
في البداية أشكر المغرب ملكاً وحكومة وشعباً على استضافتها لهذا التجمع الذي يهدف لتحقيق الأمن الغذائي لشعوبنا العربية والإفريقية. وأشكر المستعرضين لتوفير إمكانيات لتحقيق هذا الهدف. والجدير بالذكر في هذا الجانب هو الجانب المالي لتحقيق هذا الهدف الذي يحقق تلك الإمكانات لتحقيق الهدف المنشود وهو الأمن الغذائي. وحيث أن البرلمانات هي المكون لتلك الشبكة، وهي المنظور التشريعي لتحقيق تلك الإمكانات في بلدانها من خلال سن تشريعات آمنة وممكنة وممكنة للمستثمرين في هذا الجانب. أقترح أن تكون هناك تشريعات بإنشاء مصارف استثمارية للأمن الغذائي تمول تلك المشاريع وتحل مشكل وتقييم الحصول على الأراضي لتحقيق الأمن الغذائي. من خلالها نستطيع أن نحن المقترحات، تحقيق تلك المقترحات، نتاج تلك المقترحات من خلال تمويل تلك المشاريع من خلال نتائجها. عندما تبدأ هناك نتائج نستطيع أن نعرف تلك الإمكانات التي توفرت عليها تلك المشاريع حققت الغرض أم لم تحققه. أما في وجود الفقر ووجود العوز لا يمكن أن نحن نستطيع أن نستقطع الأراضي ونعطيها لأناس لا يستطيعون تحقيق شيء منها. أما عند توفر المال نستطيع أن نقيم تلك المشاريع ونعمل من خلالها. شكرا.
شكرا. هل هناك لديك تعقيب على الموضوع؟ أوكي. طلب السيد الأمين العام لأسيك التحدث، فليتفضل.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to share our experience in Ethiopia regarding the land tenure and the empowerment of women. With regard to empowerment of women, our government now has reached the level of, in the cabinet, we have 50% ladies, and then in our parliament, 35% of parliamentarians are now, and now we are intending to raise the level of, during the next election, which is going to take place in May, to 50%. And then in all governmental functions from top to bottom, the participation of women is going to be equal to that of men. No party can run for election unless he has got 50% of women in their list of candidates. Regarding land tenure, from the days of the socialist regime, the entire land confiscated from owners and given to and made property for the government and the people. And then gradually land is registered in the name of man and woman, husband and wife. And then the man cannot dispose this land without the will of the woman. And then, because the ownership is now transferred to both husband and wife. In case the government wants to take a certain spot of land, then it negotiates with the owner with a level of compensation, and then they give them another land in replacement of the land confiscated. This is the direction the government as a policy wants to follow. Probably this may help members of delegates here to get an idea on how to go about the land's tenure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That is a very important aspect and very close to my heart. Whenever the state, as a powerful institution, acquires land from those who hold those legitimate rights, in most cases, what we are seeing across the world and specifically in our own countries is lack of adequate compensation, forced evictions of those that own the land, and then they are not compensated. This is quite prevalent. And the voluntary guidelines have developed a specific provisions and guidance for those who want to implement responsible governance to ensure that whenever land is acquired, the holders of that right, whether it's recorded or registered right or unregistered right, should get adequate compensation. That ensures that their lives are not disrupted. That ensures their livelihoods are not disrupted, and those people can continue to live normal lives. And to balance that and to strike that point of adequate compensation, there is a need for institutions that are strong enough. There is a need for legislation and policies that are strong enough and enforceable and implemented without any discrimination and implemented without corruption to ensure that those that are affected are compensated. The key issue that is happening from 2008 with the rush for land in Africa is that the big companies from outside Africa come in to look for land for investment, and they look for countries with very weak enforcement mechanisms for their own laws. They also rush for easy lands where they can invest and get people moved off without much of a problem. And we call it the race to the bottom. That race to the bottom ensures that investors are running to compete for those countries where it's easy to go and invest. However, with the further developments and many countries and companies looking at products coming from these investments, they now prefer products coming from investments that protect or respect the rights of citizens. And they start to reject the products that are coming from countries that infringe on people's rights. And gradually, there's a reputational risk on the investment companies. And most companies are beginning to toe the line to ensure that for long-term respect of their own legitimacy, they need to respect the tenure rights of people on the ground. So that's a very good contribution. We have got a specific tool which was developed, that is Technical Guide number 11, which is implemented in line with Technical Guide number 3 and Technical Guide number 7 and 4, which deal with issues of respect to investments, consultations of communities, valuation of those investments. Most of our constitutions actually provide for compensation, but how far that is enforced has always been a problem.
شكرا سيد ماكاي. أعتقد قد فتحت مجالا للنقاش، فهناك يعني سؤال ثاني من السيدة. تفضلي سيدتي. السؤال.
Oui, sénateur de Madagascar, Olkara Malasson. Tout d'abord, j'aimerais féliciter M. Mackay de son intervention de tout à l'heure. Par contre, est-ce qu'on pourrait avoir une version en française de votre intervention ou bien le lien de tout à l'heure? Parce que c'est très intéressant, mais j'aimerais avoir une version française. Ma question, c'est un autre aspect problématique en ce qui concerne donc les terrains accaparés par les colons durant l'ère coloniale et qui sont des terrains qui appartenant aux ancêtres. Et après la colonisation, donc, il y a des conflits, beaucoup de conflits sur ces terrains. Est-ce que vous avez pensé à traiter donc cette problématique-là pour avoir des solutions? Parce que ce sont des bons terrains, des terrains productifs. Et là, en ce moment, il y a beaucoup de conflits sur ces terrains. Merci.
Thank you. First of all, on the issue of the French version, we'll try by all means to have the translations done. So that you can get a French version of the presentation. Secondly, regarding the lands that were expropriated, I don't want actually to use the word expropriated. From a legal perspective, I want to use the word confiscated. In many instances across the continent, when the colonizers came, they did not really expropriate. They just confiscated the land, because expropriation from a technical perspective entails payment of just compensation, whereas confiscation does not really entail payment of compensation. You are just simply removed from the land and moved into what we may call a homeland or a reserve, which is deemed to be suitable for you. So the voluntary guidelines have got a specific section that deals with redistributive land reforms that ensure equitable ownership of land in proportion sometimes to, let's say, the populations. We have seen this happening and being a phenomenon in Southern Africa, in the SADC region, Zimbabwe, Namibia, South Africa, which got their independence not long ago, and still grappling with the years of colonization and dispossession, and trying to balance the ownership of land between the populations. With major land, for example, 43% of the land, arable land in Namibia was under commercial farming areas, and owned by only about 2% of the population, whereas the rest of the people were squeezed in non-productive land. And now, after independence, there's been a desire to redress that situation, and it's not an easy one. And as you say, rightfully, a lot of conflicts are born out of that. Zimbabwe has seen its fair share of conflicts. South Africa is reeling with that problem as well. So the VGGTs have got specific provisions. FAO has been working on this specific area for many years, even prior to the VGGTs, and produced a lot of technical materials that can be used to redress the skewed distribution of land in those countries.
Thank you. شكرا. قبل أختتم هذه الجلسة طلب مني السيد جون ليونارد إضافة لسؤال السيدة شيئا ما في توضيح بعد التساؤل التي تقدمت به. تفضل سيد جون.
Merci beaucoup, honorable, pour votre question. Mon collègue Mackay a déjà donné une réponse technique. J'aimerais donner une réponse historique et politique. Il y a quelqu'un qui a défini la colonisation comme l'expropriation de l'espace et du temps. L'espace et le temps des peuples colonisés a été confisqué, comme on le disait tantôt. Et l'indépendance devait être le moment de la réappropriation de l'espace et du temps. Mais pour pouvoir le faire, il aurait fallu que les États colonisés ou les États devenus indépendants puissent abandonner le modèle économique et colonial. C'est-à-dire la monoculture, par exemple, qui a été imposée à ces pays et qui demandait de plus en plus de terres confisquées par les concessions coloniales. Il fallait donc un remodélage de l'espace économique, un remodélage des priorités économiques pour abandonner, par exemple, la culture de rente pour aller vers la culture qui servait à donner à manger aux populations, n'est-ce pas? Il se trouve que ce remodélage du modèle économique n'a pas été accompli de la manière dont auraient souhaité les peuples africains. Il y a eu comme une espèce de continuité entre le modèle économique colonial et donc occupation des terres, monoculture, au profit de l'agriculture qui servait pour les populations. Donc il y a une question politique et il y a une question historique d'une décolonisation qui n'a pas encore fini d'être réalisée. Merci.
شكرا سيد جيون على هذه التوضيحات. قبل أن أرفع هذه الجلسة أود أن أذكر السادة المشاركين بأن هناك عشاء بفندق صومعة حسان على الساعة 8. شكرا مرة أخرى للمتحدثين وتأسف عن الوقت لأن أكون شيئا ما قاسية في الوقت، لكن تعب المشاركين يعني قد أرغمني على أن أحترم من الوقت. لذا نشكر المتحدثين، نشكر المشاركين في هذه الندوة. لنا لقاء غدا إن شاء الله في الندوة الدولية حول موضوع البرلمانات ورهانات الأمن الغذائي. شكرا، ورفعت هذه الجلسة. إلى الغد إن شاء الله.